Businessman opens safe to uncover hidden truths. What the cleaner revealed was life-changing. Jim Carter felt the weight of his father's legacy pressing down on his shoulders like a leaden blanket. At 35, he was expected to turn the family hardware store around, yet every year was a struggle against rising rent and the relentless tide of big-box retailers. He walked the aisles, surrounded by dusty shelves, reminders of a better time when laughter filled the air and neighbors gathered to share stories and advice. Now, the silence of the store echoed his self-doubt. One seemingly ordinary day, Jim found himself in a neglected corner, ready to sort through years of accumulated dust. As he brushed away cobwebs, he stumbled upon a rusted safe wedged behind old boxes. Curiosity sparked within him, nagging at his heart. What secrets lay within? With shaking hands, he pried it open, and memories swirled like autumn leaves, spilling forth letters and photographs. They were a flood of voices, a deluge of community bonds, shared struggles, and moments of tenderness that once defined them all. Jim felt his heart race as he sifted through the artifacts. There were letters from veterans who had worked side by side with his father, stories of camaraderie forged in the trenches of war but now lay quiet in the pages. There were notes from neighbors thanking his father for small acts of kindness. Each piece felt like a thread woven into the fabric of their community, alive with resilience and hope. Maria, the store's cleaner, entered just as Jim's eyes brightened with recognition. A single mother from the neighborhood, she had known his father as a man of integrity. "These letters, they're more than just words," she said, her voice soft yet firm. "They remind us of who we are." Together, they pored over the letters, and Maria's insights brought warmth to the cold, lonely corners of the store. She connected each story to the everyday lives of those around them, reminding Jim of their shared humanity in a world that oftentimes felt isolated and harsh. With every treasure unearthed, Jim began to see pieces of himself within the tales, reawakening a deep-rooted sense of purpose, a hope that had long been buried under expectations and fears. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but just as Jim began to cherish these insights, the real world crashed in. News filtered through the community. An unscrupulous businessman coveted their beloved store, intending to buy it out and replace it with something soulless. Fear bubbled among the residents. What would become of their shared history? Jim felt it clawing at him, threatening to disconnect the very roots his father had planted. Then a chance encounter with his estranged sister opened old wounds, forcing Jim to reevaluate what success meant to him. In the shadows of family history, he realized that honoring his father's legacy wouldn't be measured in profits, but in the strength of their community and the bonds forged in kindness. The safe had unlocked more than memories. It had revealed a path forward, one filled with potential. But uncertainty loomed. Could he find the courage to lead his community against the threat that hung over them? As the walls of the store began to feel like a battleground, Jim knew he was standing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. Would he embrace the fight or let fear win yet again? Jim woke the next morning with a fire in his chest. The weight of the letters had shifted something inside him. He felt connected to his father, and the strength of their community surged through him like an electric current. It was time to act. The sun streamed into the hardware store, the light dancing off the dust motes in the air. Jim took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the scent of wood and metal his father's world. Today, he wouldn't see the store as a burden, but as a lifeblood for his community. He needed to rally them, to remind everyone of what was at stake. He reached for his phone and hesitated. What could he say? He wanted to express the urgency he felt, to awaken the same passion in others. With his heart pounding, he dialed Maria. She answered with a hint of sleep in her voice. "Jim? What's up?" I need your help, he replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Can we gather everyone at the community center tonight? I want to talk about saving the store. Silence met him on the other end. You really think they LL care? She asked. They will if we show them what's at stake, Jim insisted. This is about more than just selling hammers and nails. It's about our history. It's about our families. Her voice softened. Okay, I'll help. But you'll have to do most of the talking. You have to believe they listen. I do. The conviction in his voice surprised him, but he couldn't let it falter. They set a time and began to spread the word. As the day wore on, Jim zipped through the store, feeling more alive than he had in years. He transformed the shop into a makeshift backdrop for their community gathering. He hung up old photographs of families that had shopped there for generations and laid out the letters that had ignited this fire, a tangible symbol of the bond they all shared. The community center buzzed with anticipation as neighbors trickled in. Familiar faces greeted him, but Jim also spotted newcomers, people who had moved into the neighborhood, while others had drifted away over time. He could feel the pulse of the community growing stronger as more voices joined in. When it came time to speak, he could sense a wave of curiosity washing over him. He shuffled in front of the crowd, his heart thumping louder than it ever had before. Thank you all for coming, he began, glancing at Maria, who stood resolutely at his side. We're facing a threat that could change our hometown forever. This isn't just about a hardware store. It's about our stories, our connections, our legacy. My father believed in this place. He was proud to serve all of you. Jim shared some letters, voicing words of gratitude from their neighbors. He saw emotions flicker across faces: recognition, nostalgia, anger, hope. He was speaking their truths. After finishing, he opened up the floor. What can we do together? How can we fight for our history? Voices erupted, ideas flowed. Someone proposed a community fundraising drive. Another suggested a petition. Each suggestion felt like a stitch in a larger fabric, weaving hope back into their lives. As the energy in the room soared, Jim felt a rush of warmth in his chest. They weren't just fighting for a store, they were fighting for their heart, a community reborn. But just as they were about to cement their plans, the door swung open, and a shadow fell across the threshold. It was the businessman, his presence icy and imposing, a stark contrast to the warmth filling the room. I see you're rallying the troops, Jim. How nice. But you really think this is going to stop me? A chill ran through the crowd. Jim's heart raced again, but this time it was with determination. With a steady voice, he stepped forward. We'll see about that. What did this confrontation mean for Jim and the community? Would they have the strength to stand against the looming threat, or was it already too late? The tension in the community center was palpable. Everyone turned toward the businessman, a mix of fear and defiance etched on their faces. Jim clenched his fists, feeling the weight of their gazes. He was their voice now. What do you want, Richard? Jim asked, lacing his words with a calm he didn't fully feel. The businessman didn't need an invitation to make his intentions known. He relished the spotlight, the power it gave him. I want you to understand something, Richard replied, oozing arrogance. You're a small town with small-town dreams. This hardware store? It's just a relic. I've got plans to turn this property into something that actually earns a profit. So, why not save yourself the trouble? Gasps echoed in the room. Jim stuck his chin out, every inch of him demanding respect. This town has value beyond profit. We're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're families, stories, and history. He shot back, the fire reigniting in his chest. The tension tipped. A few people in the crowd started murmuring, fueling the fight within Jim. He felt them rallying behind him, their hope like a shield. I'll tell you what you really don't get, Richard. This place matters, he continued. It matters to folks who grew up shopping here. It matters to people who remember their parents and grandparents walking through these doors. You can't measure that with money. Richard's sneer faltered for an instant, but he quickly masked it with a scoff. Sentiment won't save you. There are businesses ready to pay handsomely for this land. You're standing on quicksand, my friend. A swell of anger rippled through the crowd, their loyalty ignited. They whispered among themselves, each conversation growing louder with conviction. Maria stepped forward, her voice echoing with strength. And we'll stand our ground. This isn't just Jim's fight, it's ours. We're going to protect what matters. You think you can bulldoze our legacy and walk away with nothing but profit? Not while we breathe. Applause erupted from the crowd, cheers of support that fueled Jim's spirit. What do you say, everyone? Jim shouted over the clatter. Are we standing together for our store? For our community? Yes, came the roar, a tidal wave of voices that washed over Richard, drowning out his dismissive expression. Richard took a step back, weighing his options as uncertainty flickered in his icy eyes. You think this is over? Just wait until I come back. You'll realize you've made a mistake. He turned on his heel and stormed out, the door groaning in protest behind him. Relief washed through the room, mixed with adrenaline as the realization settled in. They had won this round. But Jim knew the battle was far from over. Now let us get to work, he called out, flipping the energy in the room from fear to purpose. We need to organize, get our petition going, and set these plans into motion. As they brainstormed, laughter and excitement filled the room. For the first time in what felt like ages, they weren't just surviving, they were living a community, igniting their legacy anew. Yet, amidst the joy, doubts lingered in Jim's heart. How long before Richard would return? What if the businessman had more tricks up his sleeve? Just then, Maria leaned in. Jim, have you thought about what we might discover in his plans? What if there's something hidden that could change everything? Jim's heart raced at the thought. Hidden? What do you mean? She locked eyes with him, a glint of determination flashing. If we could find out where he's getting his funding, it might give us a way to fight back. But we'll need this community to dig deep. As the crowd buzzed with ideas, Jim knew they were at a turning point. This was just the beginning, and together, they might be able to uncover the truth that could save their home. What surprising truths lay hidden in the businessman's plans, and would Jim and the community dare to look deeper? The days turned into a blur. Meetings packed the community center as Jim and the townsfolk organized themselves, resolute in their mission. Each gathering felt electric, a vibrant pulse of hope flickering in the air. Plans tragically woven in with the threat of Richard's return turned every whisper and laugh into an appeal for solidarity. Yet, Jim could feel the tide rising. Every word they spoke strengthened their mutual resolve, but also reminded him the businessman could strike at any moment. As night fell again, he took a deep breath, his chest swelling with both pride and anxiety. Maria stood at his side, flipping through documents they had gathered. We need to get more specific, she declared, her brow furrowing with concentration. We can't just fight sentimentally. We need facts. Right, he replied, rubbing his temples. But where do we start? He's a wolf in a tuxedo. We need every angle covered. Just then, they heard a knock. It was Anna, a local janitor who worked part-time at the community center. I have something to show you, she said, urgency etched across her face. I was cleaning the back office when I found an envelope. The room fell silent, curiosity blooming instantly. What do you mean? Jim asked, stepping closer. What envelope? It had Richard's name on it. I thought it was just trash at first, but something told me to keep it. I think it might be important. She held up a worn envelope, its edges frayed yet densely sealed. Open it. Let us see what we've got. Anna tore the envelope gingerly, her hands trembling. Inside lay a sheet of paper, typed with precise clarity. Everyone leaned in as she unfolded it. A list of names, a series of figures, and somewhere near the bottom, bank statements. Murmurs broke out across the crowd, eyes darting between Jim and Maria. This looks like, Maria began, her voice trailing off as she read the names out loud. These are banks. And businesses. Why would Richard be involved with a company called Pacific Holdings? Jim felt his heartbeat quicken. He recognized the name from whispers around town. They're known for buying up property and flipping it for profit. They market themselves as revitalizers, but we know the truth, they just bulldoze everything. A mix of determination and dread surged through the room. What were the chances Richard was in deep with someone like that? But why would he have these documents lying around? One of the townsfolk asked, suspicion seeping into the air. Maybe he thought no one would ever care, Anna replied. Her voice dropped, adding weight to her words. But if we can show this, if we can connect Richard with more than just arrogance, we might have a defense. What if we reach out to these businesses? Jim said, feeling inspiration surge within him. The ones involved in this. Surely, they want their names tainted by what he's planning. Hope rekindled in the room, a daring idea that began to take flight. Each person seemed charged, envisioning the details, the avenues to explore. They could fight back, maybe even build a coalition that transcended their small community-esque grasp. However, just as excitement hit a peak, Jim felt that familiar twinge of doubt prickle his skin. What if Richard caught wind of their plans? What if he had eyes and ears everywhere? Jim? Maria's voice broke through, her eyes filled with unease. What if we are poking a bear? What if he retaliates? We can't just expose him without being ready for whatever might come next. There it was, the very real fear they all grappled with. But Jim met her gaze, a spark igniting within. What choice do we have? He said. If we don't take chances, we lose everything. It's time to go on the offensive. He saw agreement in the nods around him. Together, they might just uncover more than they realized. But as night settled over the town, they knew shadows loomed ahead, the kind that could consume them if they didn't stay vigilant. Would they uncover the real web Richard spun around the town, or do they risk everything in a fight that could take more than they were willing to lose? The following days felt like a teetering tightrope act. Tension crackled in every corner of the community center as the townsfolk rallied around Jim and Maria. Paperwork blanketed the tables, while discussions swirled like a winter storm. Their new mission felt monumental. They were fighting not only for their homes, but for their very way of life. Anna joined Jim and Maria more often, excitedly researching the connections between Richard and Pacific Holdings. Each finding brought them closer to solid ground. She was relentless, fueled by the idea that she could finally stand up for the community that had once overlooked her. One evening, she burst through the community center doors, breathless. I got something. You need to see this. The trio huddled at the back of the room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Anna slammed her laptop shut with zeal. Look at this. She opened up a browser full of data. The screen displayed a series of articles detailing Pacific Holdings' sketchy dealings, focusing on countless towns that suffered under their influence. Here, Anna pointed excitedly. They've pushed families out of their homes in 3 different states. Protests erupted everywhere they went. Her eyes gleamed with hope. If we can show this as a pattern, we could warn others. We need the public to care, to see Richard as the villain he is. Maria bit her lip. But how do we force people to pay attention? This town is small, and people might still hesitate. We need hard evidence to show why Richard and that company are dangerous. Jim nodded, feeling the weight of uncertainty, yet a flicker of enthusiasm persisted. What if we throw a town hall meeting? Invite everyone, families, local media, even those businesses that might help us. If we expose the truth about Richard and Pacific, we could rally them together. Anna and Maria exchanged glances, excitement bubbling just beneath the surface. We could use those documents, Maria chimed in. Integrate their histories, the ways they hurt communities. It could create a sense of urgency. As preparations unfolded, the sense of vulnerability lingered. Who might be watching? Richard's influence loomed over them like a dark cloud, threatening to rain despair down upon their determined spirits. What if he decided to dismantle everything they built before they ever had a chance to strike? One late afternoon, Jim caught sight of a familiar black sedan parked near the community center. His stomach twisted. He knew that car. Is that Richard's? He whispered, heart pounding in his chest. Maria turned, her expression hardening. Crap. We've got to be careful. If he's here. Before she could finish, the tension in the air thickened. The door swung open and Richard entered, a polished smile on his face. Well, what do we have here? Planning a little party, are we? An uneasy silence settled over the gathered townsfolk. Richard's voice dripped with sarcasm, his confidence radiating as he scanned the room. Hope it's not something boring. Jim felt every eye in the room turn toward him. The urge to run crept in, pushing against the resolve they'd built. But bolstered by the people around him, he stepped forward. No, Richard, it's not boring. It's about the future of our town. We're taking a stand. Richard's laughter echoed, a chilling reminder of the battle ahead. Good luck with that, he said, his expression hardening. You'll need it. As he turned to leave, Jim's mind raced. They were in the eye of the storm, and Richard's threat was growing sharper. But what if this was the shift they needed? Would they find the strength to stand together and face this giant, or would Richard's dark shadow consume their fight for justice? The question hung heavily in the air, each heartbeat resonating with a determination that seemed to pulse through each of them. The town hall meeting was set for the following week, and excitement buzzed through the community. Posters decorated the walls of the center, announcing the time and date, while the air thrummed with a mix of anticipation and fear. Each day that passed felt like a countdown to a battle that was both exhilarating and daunting. Anna was in her element, organizing lists of those who would speak and gathering evidence that outlined Pacific Holdings' harmful history. Jim and Maria continued to rally support, knocking on doors and spreading the word. They were fueled by a fire ignited within them, yet doubt occasionally whittled away at their resolve. What if they were overstepping? What if no one cared? The fragile balance between hope and anxiety twisted inside them. On the night before the meeting, they gathered in Maria's living room, a small space filled with old photographs and the comforting scent of homemade cookies. The comforting atmosphere did little to calm Jim's jitters. He paced the room, glancing out of the window at the darkening sky, seeds of worry planted deep in his heart. "Do you really think people will show up?" he asked, his voice quaking. Maria met his gaze firmly. "They will. We just have to believe they want to fight this as much as we do." Anna, nodding in agreement, added, "We also need to show them that it's not just about us. This is about preserving everything we love: our homes, our families, and our future." Her words spilled like a gentle balm, soothing some of Jim's fears. That night, before bed, Jim lay awake. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of his frustrations merging with the potential of triumph. What would tomorrow bring? The thought of Richard's sneering face lingered in his mind, a reminder of what they were up against. He imagined how satisfying it would be to expose him to the community and unveil the truth. As morning arrived, the community center was buzzing. Jim, Maria, and Anna arrived early, eager to finalize everything. A sense of camaraderie enveloped them. They greeted faces etched with curiosity and anticipation. The air was electric, filled with whispers and glances exchanged among the townsfolk. When the meeting began, Jim felt his heart race. He stood at the front alongside Maria and Anna, their hands forming a united front. With courage twisting in his lungs, Jim began to speak. He shared personal stories of families affected by Pacific Holdings. He spoke of loss, of pain, of their shared history as a town. The words flowed with raw emotion, connecting each listener to the cause, but just as the meeting seemed to gain momentum, a figure emerged in the back. It was Richard, standing with that same infuriating smirk plastered on his face. The room fell silent, tension winding tight like a rubber band ready to snap. "Oh, come on. You can't be serious," Richard called out, cutting through Jim's speech. "You really think you can win this? You're nothing without your quaint little lives." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as their anger simmered. Jim felt their eyes shift between him and Richard, a battle brewing. "Just wait," Richard continued, his tone dripping with condescension. "I've got more power and resources than you could ever dream of. You really believe your little meeting can sway anything?" In that moment, Jim's heart pounded violently. He had two choices: step back into fear or confront Richard head-on. With the resolve growing within him, he took a deep breath and called out, "You underestimate us. This town stands together, and we will be heard." The room erupted into murmurs, people beginning to whisper, nodding in agreement. Jim glanced at Maria and Anna, their eyes shining with the same determination. He felt as the storm thickened. With Richard pushing back firmly, Jim realized this was only the beginning. The crowd felt alive, charged with purpose. But in the back of his mind, a familiar worry nagged at him. What lengths would Richard go to prevent their uprising? Join us next time as Jim faces the ruthless tactics of Richard and dives deeper into the fight that could either unite their community or tear it apart. The atmosphere in the community center shifted abruptly as Richard's mocking laughter echoed through the packed room. Jim felt a knot form in the pit of his stomach, but he fought to stay strong, clenching his fists at his sides. He could sense the tension ripple across the crowd. They were with him, but fear was a powerful thing. Maria stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're not backing down. This isn't just about winning. It's about fighting for our homes, our families, and our future." Her words ignited a fire among the crowd. Heads nodded in agreement, and murmurs of support rose like a wave of hope. Richard's smirk faltered, just for a moment. He scanned the faces before him, measuring the determination lighting their eyes. "You really think you can stand against me?" he sneered, folding his arms. "You'll put your little town's fate in the hands of the underdogs?" The people in the room began to shift, some standing, others whispering amongst themselves. Anna stepped to the front, her eyes fierce. "We're not underdogs. We're a community. We have each other's backs, and together, we're stronger than any corporation." That was it. The room erupted, voices united, fists raised in solidarity. But somewhere in the back of his mind, doubt crept back in. Richard was cunning, and he wouldn't take this lightly. What kind of retaliation would he orchestrate? Jim's pulse quickened just thinking about it. Richard's expression cooled, his smile disappearing. "Very well, let us play your game for now. Just remember, the truth is not always what it seems. I have my own ways of dealing with nuisances." Jim felt the air shift again as tension thickened. He exchanged glances with Maria and Anna. They understood that Richard was about to make his move. The man was capable of monolithic damage, and if he wanted to intimidate them, he could. The meeting continued, but every time Richard spoke, it was like a dark cloud looming just above them. He threw out labyrinthine threats dressed as corporate jargon, creating a wall of confusion meant to suffocate hope. But it only hardened Jim's resolve. In his heart, he knew that no matter what Richard said, it couldn't dull the spirit of their community. As they wrapped up, Jim took a moment to gather his thoughts. The meeting had felt like an uphill battle, but they had planted the seeds of change. "We'll have to meet again soon and structure our next steps," he announced, seeing nods from several familiar faces in the crowd. Richard stood at the back, calculating. "Good luck with that, Jim. But remember, I won't let this go unchallenged. The town is mine, and I have the resources to prove it." The challenge was clear, and the stakes were higher than ever. In the days that followed, everything changed. As he walked home, Jim felt the weight of the fight pressing on him, but hope flickered like a candle in his heart. Maria and Anna were with him, and together they had ignited a fire inside this town. But could unity withstand the storm Richard was sure to unleash? Then came the unexpected news. A former cleaner for Pacific Holdings reached out to them. What could she possibly know that would turn the tide? Intrigued yet cautious, Jim realized that their battle was far from over. With a mix of anticipation and dread, Jim thought, what truth could this woman hold that could shift the balance? Join us next time as Jim unravels hidden secrets that could alter everything they thought they knew about Pacific Holdings. As dusk settled over the town, Jim couldn't shake the jitters from his mind. He paced the small living room, the corners illuminated by a single lamp, its light flickering like the uncertainty that danced inside him. The phone call from the former cleaner had left him both intrigued and anxious. What had she seen? What had she heard? He missed the comfort of a regular life, where problems faded with the setting sun. Now, everything felt like a slow burn. Maria arrived first, wrapping him in a quick hug that warmed his heart. "Hey, you okay?" she asked, her eyes soft with concern. "Just thinking about that cleaner," he admitted. "What do you think she knows? Can we really trust her?" Anna burst in seconds later, her ponytail swinging, bringing a gust of energy into the room. "Let us look at this as a chance. If she knows something about Pacific Holdings, it could give us the edge we need." "Unless it puts us all in danger," Jim replied, feeling the weight of his responsibility for those around him. The last thing he wanted was for anyone else to get hurt because of his decisions, but Maria was relentless. Jim, we can't let fear paralyze us. Remember what we're fighting for. Sometimes it's worth the risk. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push away the concerns. She was right, but the haunting thought of Richard's threats lingered. Hours later, they gathered in the dim light of the diner where they always met. The familiar scent of coffee and grilled burgers surrounded them, but instead of comfort, it felt like tension filled the air. They had convinced themselves that the meeting would uncover powerful information, but what if it was simply an empty promise? Jim, Anna, Maria. The voice cut through his anxious thoughts. It was Lila, the former cleaner, her figure small but resolute as she approached their booth. She looked around nervously, as if afraid of being seen. "Thanks for coming," Jim said, trying to mask his nerves. He gestured for her to sit, watching her fidget with the edges of her jacket. Lila took a deep breath. "I don't have much time. Richard's people, he's got eyes everywhere." Jim's heart raced. "What do you know?" Lila leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I worked in the offices before he started taking over the properties. I heard whispers, things that never made it to the public." "What kind of things?" Maria asked, leaning forward, her ears tuned for hidden truths. A flicker of fear crossed Lila's face. "They plan on demolishing more than just buildings. They're planning to push out anyone standing in their way. There's a whole system designed to take over the community bit by bit." The words felt like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" Jim pressed. "If you fight back, they'll retaliate with everything they have," Lila warned. "They know how to make people disappear. But there's more. There are documents, records of corrupt deals. If you can get your hands on them, you can expose him." The energy in the room shifted like a live wire. Hope mixed with dread, igniting something deep within Jim's chest. "Where are they?" he murmured. "I can help, but you need to be careful," Lila replied, glancing around again. "If Richard finds out I'm here, well, I can't think about that now." As they began to outline a plan, adrenaline surged through Jim. The fight was far from over. It could actually be heating up. But as excitement mingled with anxiety, a familiar weight settled on his heart. The risks were greater than he had anticipated. Before they could dive deeper into their strategy, there was a commotion outside the diner. A group of Richard's men stood nearby, scanning the parking lot. Jim felt the color drain from his face. "What do we do?" he whispered, panic clawing at his throat. Could they move quickly enough to dodge the storm that was fast approaching? In this decisive moment, the answer could change everything. Was the fire they'd ignited worth the heat that was coming? Jim's heart pounded in his chest, frantic and wild. The sight of Richard's men sent a chill down his spine. They were mean-looking, toughened by the streets they patrolled. He glanced at Lila, whose eyes mirrored his fear, wide and anxious. "Stay low," Anna whispered, a plan forming in her mind. They'd known, deep down, that the walls were closing in, but facing it head-on felt overwhelming. With barely a moment to think, Jim slid out of the booth, gesturing for Maria, Anna, and Lila to follow. They ducked behind a large potted plant, its leaves offering scant cover. The clatter of dishes and laughter inside the diner faded to a low hum as the reality of the situation settled like a weight in his gut. They were in dangerous territory now. "What do we do?" Maria breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. The determination still sparkled in her eyes, but the fear was there, too raw and real. "We need to get out of here, regroup. We can't let them catch us," Jim replied, his mind racing. He had no idea how to maneuver through this mess safely, but he couldn't let fear take over. "Not now." Lila pulled her phone from her pocket, her hands trembling, the small device seeming like a beacon of hope. "I have the address for where the documents are stored, but we can't get to it without a plan." "Let's find a back exit," Anna urged, eyeing the rear of the diner where the kitchen smoke billowed. "If we're quick, we can get out of sight." The group maneuvered, hearts in their throats, moving silently like shadows between tables and past the clinking of silverware. Jumbled thoughts swirled in Jim's mind. Was this what they'd signed up for? Every instinct told him to run, but every beat of his heart reminded him why he needed to fight. As they neared the kitchen's door, a sudden burst of laughter sounded from the assembly of men outside. "I think I saw them head this way," one of them called, his voice gruff. Adrenaline surged through Jim. They were too close. "No! Move!" Jim shouted, pushing the door open. A wave of heat washed over him as the aroma of grease and sautéed vegetables filled his senses. They rushed through the kitchen, weaving past the unsuspecting cooks. Jim felt a moment of guilt for the chaos they were about to disrupt. But that thought slipped away, consumed by urgency, almost out. Just a few more steps and they would be clear. "Hey!" A voice boomed from behind them. One of Richard's men had followed. Panic flared inside Jim. They dashed out into the alley, the dim twilight feeling like a shield against their pursuers. Jim glanced back, seeing the man stumble but not fall. "We need to split up," he called, desperation creeping into his voice. "Meet at the old garage after the sun sets." "Are you crazy?" Maria said, eyes wide. "What if one of us gets caught?" "Being together makes us a target," Jim insisted, the urgency giving him clarity. "Lila can guide me to the documents. You guys just need to be safe." He saw the look of worry etched across their faces, but he also saw trust. A fierce spark ignited inside them. They would fight no matter the odds. "Okay," Anna finally agreed. "But be careful, Jim." Jim nodded, trying to mask the dread pooling in his stomach as he and Lila took off to the side street, leaving his friends behind them, hearts racing in different directions. They took hurried turns, alleyways blurring as they ran, until they reached a nondescript storage facility. Lila glanced back, still nervous. "It should be here. I just hope we can get in." Before they could catch their breath, they saw the locked door of the storage unit looming in front of them, a gateway to secrets that could change everything. "Okay, but if this goes wrong, we need to be ready," Jim said, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. As Lila fumbled with her key, Jim's mind raced with what could be waiting inside. Would the truths they uncovered give them the leverage they needed, or would it seal their fates? He felt the weight of what was coming, the risks, the stakes. Was he ready to stand against Richard's empire and risk it all? When the lock clicked open, the shadows of secrets loomed before them. Jim felt his heart pound like a drum as the lock clicked open. It was a simple sound, but it echoed through the cavern of uncertainty stretching before them. Lila nudged the door open, revealing shelves stacked high with boxes, documents cluttered atop equipment, and a faint smell of stale air. "Here we go," she whispered, stepping cautiously inside. The dim light illuminated worn faces of old machinery, but beyond that lay the unknown. Together, they stepped in, and Jim held his breath. There it was, the potential truth that could devastate Pacific Holdings and expose Richard's grasp on their town. Lila scoured the first box. The full weight of what they were about to unearth settled like the dust swirling around them. "Let's check these bank documents," Lila said, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the pages. Each one felt like a step closer to understanding what kind of monster Richard really was. Jim's mind whirred with anticipation. As they dove deeper, the information began to pour forth. It was shocking. Clever schemes and underhanded dealings waited to be uncovered. Each contract they pulled out painted a clearer picture of the lengths Richard would go to crush anyone in his way. "Look at this," Lila exclaimed, pointing to a clause hidden in small print. "This is about underpayment for properties. They're not just taking away homes. They're forcefully evicting families and breaking every rule in the book." Fuel coursed through Jim's veins as realization dawned. They could expose not just Richard, but an entire network of corruption. "If we can compile this and show the community and the media, we might have a fighting chance." Suddenly, the sounds of heavy footsteps echoed from outside, slamming against the walls of the storage unit. Panic gripped Jim as he and Lila exchanged wide-eyed glances. "It's Richard's men." They were closing in, threats lurking like wolves ready to bite. "Hide," Lila hissed, darting behind a stack of boxes. Jim crouched low, his heart hammering loudly in his chest, the thrill of discovery rapidly shifting to terror. He could feel the walls closing in around them, suffocating the hope they had built. The door swung open, and a pair of boots stomped inside. Primal fear clawed through Jim's thoughts. Would Richard's men find them? Would this be the end of their fight? "Search the place," one of them barked. Jim's breath held tight as he scrunched down lower, praying they wouldn't check the back where he and Lila had slipped away. Every second felt like an eternity. Lila's eyes widened, her panic mirrored in his own. Jim's instincts kicked in. "We have to create a distraction," he whispered frantically. They couldn't be caught, but they needed to warn the others. If Richard's men found them, everything was lost. Just then, a loud crashing sound jolted through the unit from outside. A voice yelled, "There they are." But it wasn't Richard's men. It was Maria and Anna. Jim. Lila. They burst into the storage unit, breathless and fierce, breaking through the tension like a ray of sunlight. Jim sprang to his feet, excitement and relief flooding him. "What are you all doing here?" "We couldn't leave you," Maria cried. "We heard you might be in trouble. We've got to get out." The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, closer. "Follow us," Anna urged, her eyes urgent. Jim wasn't about to waste a moment. They darted toward the exit, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The promise of justice thrummed in their hearts. Just as they reached the door, a shadow loomed behind them. "Stop," a voice snarled. Richard stood there, flanked by his men, their eyes glinting with imminent danger. Jim's mind raced. They had to fight. Fight for their families, their community, and their future. "Get the evidence," Jim shouted as he pushed Maria and Lila toward the exit. "We can't back down now." In that moment, energy surged among them. Maria stepped forward, arms crossed defiantly. "You've taken enough from us, Richard. We're standing up now." Richard glared, his expression hardening. "You think your little community fight will scare me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." "That's just it," Jim retorted boldly, stepping up alongside Maria and Anna. "You don't know what we're capable of when we come together. All the townspeople will hear about your deceit. You'll be exposed." Richard's eyes flickered with anger. "You think I'm afraid of some small-town pleasantries? I'm going to make you regret defying me." But Jim was ready. "We're not backing down. We have everything we need to stop you." With determination flowing through them like wildfire, they rushed toward the exit, dodging Richard's men as they moved with purpose. They could feel the silver thread of destiny tugging them homeward. As they spilled outside, the night air felt electric. Hope surged as they poured into the street where their community waited, faces wary but ready to unite against any threat. Richard's men cursed in frustration, but Jim felt his heart swell. This wasn't just about the hardware store, or even the town. It was a movement. People rallied, echoing their stories of resilience and pride. "Together," Jim bellowed, lifting his hands high. "Today, we reclaim our legacy. Let the truth be heard. We've risen up." And as the voices of support swelled around him, Jim finally understood. They were more than underdogs. They were fire, they were spirit, and they were a family bound by love and unwavering determination. In that moment, threaded with laughter and collective strength, Jim and the townsfolk were ready to face whatever Richard threw their way, united in a chorus of hope that would echo long into the future. As dawn broke, illuminating a path fraught with challenge and opportunity, Jim knew the fight was just beginning. So don't be a stranger. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm. Comment your emotions and reactions to this ending, and share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second.